Your hair color is a mistake your body made on purpose, not a flaw, not an accident. A precise biological outcome shaped by the same forces that colored your skin, your eyes, and every other visible feature you inherited, without asking. But hair color is stranger than most people realize, because unlike skin color, which follows a clear logical map tied to UV radiation and latitude, hair color does not follow clean rules. Blonde hair appears in tropical islands. Red hair clusters in rainy Atlantic coastlines. Dark hair dominates almost everywhere. And the reasons why reveal something unexpected about how evolution actually works. Messier, more opportunistic, and far more interesting than the textbook version suggests. Start with the basics. Every hair on your body gets its color from the same molecule that colors your skin, melanin. But hair melanin comes in two distinct types, and the ratio between them determines every shade from platinum blonde to blue-black. Eumelanin is dark. It produces brown and black tones. Phaeomelanin is light and warm. It produces yellow, red, and orange tones. Every natural hair color you have ever seen is just a different ratio of these two pigments being deposited into the hair shaft as it grows. High eumelanin, low phaeomelanin, black hair. Moderate eumelanin, brown. Low eumelanin, moderate phaeomelanin, blonde. Very low eumelanin, high phaeomelanin, red. Zero melanin of either type, white. The molecule is simple. What gets complicated is why different populations ended up with such dramatically different ratios. Dark hair is the ancestral baseline. Every human who ever lived in equatorial Africa for the first 200,000 years of our species had black or very dark brown hair. High melanin in hair, like high melanin in skin, offered UV protection, not just to the scalp, which sits directly under the sun, but to the follicle itself, where hair growth originates. Damage the follicle with UV radiation, and hair growth suffers. Melanin in the hair shaft is a direct line of defense. In high UV environments, it was essential. Then populations moved north, and something interesting happened. As humans migrated into Europe and northern Asia roughly 40,000 to 70,000 years ago, the UV pressure that had kept hair dark began to relax. The sun was weaker. The days were shorter. The intense selection pressure that had maintained dark hair near the equator simply wasn't there anymore. And when strong selection pressure disappears, genetic variation starts to accumulate. Mutations that would have been weeded out near the equator because they reduced melanin and left the scalp more vulnerable were no longer being eliminated. They were free to drift through populations. Blonde hair almost certainly emerged this way. A mutation reducing eumelanin production appeared in a northern population. It didn't help. It didn't hurt. It just existed. And over thousands of generations, through a combination of genetic drift and possibly mild sexual selection, it spread. The gene variant most strongly associated with European blonde hair, a single letter, change in a gene called KITLG, reduces melanin production in hair while leaving skin pigmentation largely unaffected. It is a very small change with a very visible result. And genetic evidence suggests it became common in Europe relatively recently, within the last 10,000 to 11,000 years. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. Blonde hair also appears in the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific, among populations with very dark skin living close to the equator, the exact opposite of the environment where blonde hair supposedly evolved. For years, this was a mystery. Scientists assumed the blonde hair in Melanesian populations must have come from European contact, colonizers, traders, sailors introducing European genes into Pacific Island populations. Then in 2012, A study sequenced the genomes of Solomon Islanders and found something that collapsed that assumption entirely. The blonde hair in Melanesian populations is caused by a completely different gene variant than the one that causes blonde hair in Europeans. Same visible outcome. Completely separate biological origin. Blonde hair evolved independently, twice, in two entirely different populations, in two entirely different environments, through two entirely different genetic mutations. This is convergent evolution again, the same solution appearing through different routes. But it also raises a real question. If blonde hair evolved in the Solomon Islands independently, it was presumably being selected for somehow. It wasn't just drifting neutrally. One leading hypothesis is social and sexual selection, that in certain population contexts, rare hair colors became attractive simply because they were rare and therefore easy to identify. A visible marker of genetic individuality in a small, relatively isolated population. Not a survival advantage, a social one. And then there is red hair, which is its own story entirely. Red hair is caused primarily by variants in a gene called MC1R, the melanocortin-1 receptor, which controls the switch between eumelanin and phaeomelanin production. When MC1R functions normally, it keeps eumelanin production dominant, resulting in dark hair. When MC1R variants reduce that function, phaeomelanin takes over, and the result is red and orange tones. Red hair is strongly concentrated in northwestern Europe, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and to a lesser extent Scandinavia and parts of Russia. Globally, it appears in only about 1 to 2% of the human population, but in Ireland and Scotland, it reaches 10 to 13%. Why there? The leading theory is an unlikely combination of low UV radiation and consistently cloudy, overcast skies. In northwestern Europe, especially in the British Isles, cloud cover is so persistent that even the weak northern sun is frequently blocked entirely. In that environment, any reduction in melanin, even phaeomelanin production switching to dominate over eumelanin, may have offered a slight advantage by allowing whatever minimal UV was available to penetrate the skin and trigger vitamin D production. Not a dramatic survival advantage, a marginal one. But over thousands of generations, even marginal advantages compound. MC1R variants associated with red hair are also ancient. Genetic analysis has found red hair variants in Neanderthal DNA, suggesting the mutation predates modern humans entirely and was present in at least some members of our closest extinct relatives. We may have inherited some MC1R variants from Neanderthals directly through the interbreeding that occurred when modern humans first entered Europe. Red hair, the rarest and most visually striking hair color in the human species, may be in part a Neanderthal inheritance. Hair color also changes within a single lifetime in ways that reveal how the system actually works. Most people born with blonde hair darken significantly by adulthood as melanin production in the follicle increases with age and hormonal changes. Children in many populations are born with lighter hair than they will carry as adults. This is not random. Melanin production is metabolically expensive. In infancy, when energy demands of growth are extreme, the body may simply allocate less to pigmentation. As the body stabilizes in adulthood, melanin production catches up, and then eventually it stops entirely. White and gray hair is not the production of a different pigment. It is the absence of pigment. Hair follicles contain specialized cells called melanocytes that produce and inject melanin into the growing hair shaft. As the body ages, melanocytes in individual follicles gradually die off or stop functioning. The hair that grows from a follicle that has lost its melanocytes grows in clear, and light reflects off it as white. The rate at which this happens is heavily genetic, determined by a combination of variants across multiple genes, and is also influenced by stress, illness, and environmental factors that accelerate melanocyte loss. Every hair color you have ever had, every shift from the blonde of childhood to the brown of adulthood to the gray of age, is the same system. Melanocytes producing two pigments in changing ratios, running its program from birth to death. Adjusted by latitude, modified by mutation, shaped by drift and selection, and pure biological chance over hundreds of thousands of years. Your hair color is not arbitrary. It is a record of where your ancestors lived, how long they lived there, what light they lived under, and which random mutations happened to survive long enough to reach you. Sitting on top of your head right now, growing at roughly 6 inches per year, is a visible archive of every environment your family has ever called home.